cellists. Here we are in week 10, the technicals week. And today we're going to look more closely at vibrato. So last week we did have a short technical about amplitude and speed of vibrato and how you might look at those variations when you choose how to colour your music. But now let's just take it right back. Perhaps you haven't explored vibrato yet, or you're in the early stages of learning, or you've just taken it for granted and haven't really thought much about how you're doing it. So this might be a useful check over to sort of see that you are making the most of your options in vibrato. So the first thing is looking at its macro state, which does relate to what we did yesterday. Yesterday, in terms of the left hand macro move, we had a soft fist, and I'm just going to show you with my thumb sitting straight out behind, and we did these swoops up and down the fingerboard. Now that's actually a great place for us to start, so you might swoop and then come back and settle where your thumb is sitting more or less in fourth position. The thumb is at about this point of the instrument, which is a third of the length of the string. So this is quite a nice comfortable place. I would suggest not going higher than that. Say if you were in the standard thumb position at the half length of the string, that at this point the arm is a little bit too extended away at the elbow for what we're looking for in the vibrato technique. So come back, bring that thumb to about the fourth position location so that your arm is a little bit more straight on this way. There's a little bit of bend in the elbow. And we're still in this soft fist. And the thumb is sitting straight on the middle two strings. Definitely don't protrude beyond the C string. That'll be a good guide for you. So I'm sitting on the edge of the thumb there. And we've got this fist shape. And initially I just want you to try knocking like this. Knock, 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 knock. And basically you treat the thumb as if it's a hinge, if you like. There it is. The next step to this would be to do the same idea, but you're going to put 3 fingers down, a little bit like we did these swoops with 3 fingers yesterday. So we're sitting in around about fourth position again, and we try to do the same action. Now it's a little bit harder with the fingertips. If you find that you're starting to dip or twist your wrist, or you're flexing your knuckles, that's not what we're after, so go back to the fist knock. The thing I want you to observe here is similar to when we did swoops. We're looking at quite a nice straight line from these top knuckles down to the elbow. You could probably put your bow on and go, oh yes, that's nice and straight. So we don't want a dropped wrist or a raised wrist like this, something where you pretend you don't have a wrist. So go back to reminding yourself of how this feels with the fist. If you find that putting the fingers on, you start moving this wrist about. In actual fact, it would be quite helpful to put the fourth finger down as well. Now we didn't do this with the swoop, but we were looking at the full extension of the arm and I didn't want you to get distorted. But at this location, putting a little finger on is going to help us with the sense of tipping and rocking on the little finger, which definitely needs the most assistance when it comes to vibrato. So for gentle rocking, you won't be able to tip as far as you can with the wrist, where we can come right up and back and forth like this. So all the fingers on, it's a much more subtle arc that you can't move quite as far. That's fine. And the general movement here is as a twisting mechanism. So that if I were left-handed and trying to use a screwdriver, this would be the mechanism, the motion that I would be using, like this, twisting from the elbow. But you notice the wrist that's remaining very straight, okay? And that's the same feeling here, this twisting and turning motion from the elbow. That's it. And then once you feel reasonably comfortable with this very gentle rocking, we would then take it back into third position. So now my thumb is sitting over where G and C are, which you normally play with the fourth finger. That's where they're sitting. And I'm taking this a little bit further back so I can get even more of a straight arm and coming a bit nearer to actually making a note and trying out a sound shortly. So I've still got my thumb on the string and I'm just doing the gentle rocking. The next step is to keep those fingers and that arm in that location, but take your thumb and put it behind the neck. So I'm just showing you, I've raised the thumb off and I'm putting it underneath behind the neck. And I'm going to try still doing the same rocking motion. You may find your thumb is moving backwards and forwards. Don't worry about that at this moment in time. Keep flexibility, and I'm not putting much pressure on, and I'm not keeping proper semitone distances, which would give a different arm shape. So I'm quite raised still from where we were, with the thumb above, remaining raised, the fingers quite close, the thumb just gently slip behind, but it won't probably make it right behind. If I made it right behind, you can see I would have to drop my arm, and I'm just trying to maintain the same feeling, the same motion that you had here in the third position, with the thumb just loosely behind. So it's currently more or less behind the A string, and my fingers are on the G string. Okay, so that's our initial steps to making sure that we have the right macro move, the right general arm motion. Because when it comes to it, the motion that we're looking at, this rocking motion, that it persists no matter which finger I might put down. So if I just showed you that the fingers are just an extension of the arm, so that all the time my arm is going to shake and rock, it doesn't matter which finger I put down. That's a little reminder of why we're looking at this arm motion and trying to detach it from which finger you might be using. So we've got to the point where we've got the thumb underneath and we've been fairly high and the fingers fairly close together. The next point is to come to a true third position. I'm going to move on to the D string, as I was just demonstrating there. It's quite a nice little spot to work on for left hand control, whether it's vibrato or our articulation, dexterity, a whole host of possibilities. It's a nice little location where you can observe if you need to, and we're not bringing the arm right back on itself, you know, it's quite comfortable, and you get nice natural resonance, you know, against the G string. So that's a good spot to be. So we've now come to this normal location. My thumb is sitting behind more or less the second finger, which would be a standard shape, and all fingers are reposed on the string. I'm not actually pressing hard at all, and you can continue with the rocking motion just to feel that you can do that whilst holding the hand in the standard position. Now, in terms of then each individual finger and making a sound, it won't necessarily sound very nice, these exercises. Do not worry about the sound. If you really don't like it, you could put your mute on and reduce the amount that you have to hear, or a practice mute would give you an even better benefit. So if you maybe imagine that it's going to sound a little bit like a rather sleepy bee who's lost his way. That's more or less a good description. We're going to start with the first finger and we'll take each finger in turn. So my first finger is on the G, and the feeling of the action, if I just don't momentarily show you without the bow, is I'm sitting on the G. The aim of the action is to concentrate on the tip forward, the rocking motion to the floor. And here you can see me actually putting my fourth finger onto the string, knocking it onto the string. So you could even do this as a silent action. So I've got rotation, pivoting on the first finger, and tipping all the other fingers onto the string. And this feeling of tipping like this to the floor, to gravity, where the pull of gravity is, that is your focus. It's far too easy to feel the vibrato action as tipping back like this, because that's a lot easier. And then of course you're miles away from the string and you're not going to have a proper support when it comes to the little fingers. You know, this is not going to help you. So think far more about the centre, the gravitational pull, like this, to the floor. So with that in mind, the first finger is going to, it's on a G. We're imagining we're trying to tip that point of the finger over to an A flat, which you can just about hear. So I'm starting on that G and I'm tipping towards the A flat. Now, in order to get a real big wide vibrato, a big amplitude, which obviously isn't it would be scarcely needed in a piece of music, but in order to kind of maximise all of the actions that we're looking at so that you really are understanding the fine version, we will just tip back from the G, having begun on the G, to the A flat, then roll back to an F sharp. So I've tipped my first finger right back onto its other edge to roll it backwards and forwards, as if going from something near to an F sharp. It's not really, you can hear it's much closer to the G than that. But that's what could be in your mind. And all the while you can see that it's a whole forearm rotation. It's not from the wrist, which would give you a very poor control, distortion and handache, which you don't want. All the while, remember to keep your thumb fairly centre in the palm, which is why we do it more or less opposite the second finger. And that will give you also stability within the hand as we move to the other fingers. It's very easy with the first finger that you might put your thumb straight behind the first finger, and then unfortunately you're practicing something that will not help the rest of the hand, or you need help for the fourth finger. So that's the general principle, and we could take that principle for each finger. So we start with a G, and I would suggest I did 4 wobbles, if you like. You could call it a wobblando, in each bow stroke. But let's do down and up. So we've just done our down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then move to the next finger. Once you're comfortable with that, you might do a couple of strokes and perhaps have a little break. Second finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the count, the pulse, feel it as that semitone that you're trying to rock towards as you rock towards the floor. Now, the idea of taking a specific number and being measured is part of the exercise. Don't overlook that. Don't do any old number or speed that you like. Try and make it meticulously fit with your bow and the sense of breath and pulse. Now, a useful pulse to try and latch onto is our standard natural human pulse, which would be around about 60. 60 beats per minute. It's basically at a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so that pulse, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just wondering if I'm playing that slightly fast for you now, but I want you to kind of engage something that is a steady pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe something like that. Basically, very slow. Think of the drunken bee, if you like. So we've thought about the first finger, we thought we tried the second finger, we're thinking about rocking towards the upper note as we tip the hand to the floor. Let's move to 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the little finger. Now, as I say, doesn't sound so great. Don't worry about the sound, and as I say, you could always put your mute on to try and minimise the offence to your ear. So that's stage 1, looking at the very slow rotation, the concentration of the action tipping towards the floor, towards the little finger, and thinking of a slow, even number per bow. So we went for 4. You won't do this all in one hit, but as you get more comfortable with that idea and being really careful that you are getting the right motion with this straight, flat wrist, we would then start to increase the number of pulses in the bow. So we started with 4, and then we would choose to go to 6. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, within the bow stroke. Let's just try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Guess what? 8's coming next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Beyond that, we would probably then go to the 6's values again, but we're moving to 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You should still still be able to hear the wonkiness of that. If it's getting too fast, we can maybe just about hear the number in that, but if it gets so fast that you have no control over the exact rocking speed, then you've gone too fast. Go back a little bit. So if we maybe hear them immediately in context, you might start to sort of understand how it will build up. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There were 16 these now. And that you can hear as we get faster and faster, we're coming to the point of something that our ear finds far more pleasing than the very, very slow action and amplitude. Actually, speed of vibrato is important, and it can give an awful lot away about the pulse that should be in the music. So if you were, say, you're playing in a string quartet and you've got a long note to begin with, if it was the speed of the big piece, you can give it away in the vibrato. So let's just think of a slow one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if I had the same length of note but in a quicker piece, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, there's a sense of urgency, and that even within the single note that I might be playing before the other members of your group join in and play, you can give already an indication of what tempo you're playing, purely by the way that you're encouraging those sound waves to vibrate at a kind of an intense quick speed or a sort of more calm and steady one, without vulgarity coming in at all. And so you can still keep it fairly narrow, but the speed of it will actually give an indication about the piece. So basically you can try each of those fingers with those ideas. It could be a very long business if you go through from 4, 6, 8, 12, potentially even 16 oscillations per bow stroke for each finger. You know, you're looking at an awful lot of work there. And I would advise, again, be careful. If you spend too long with your arm just held like this, you're going to build up lactic acid and get a bit of an uncomfortable aching arm. So remember to breathe and remember to take breaks. You know, an awful lot can be done in the thinking outside of that, and then you can come back and try again after a little break. Anyway, I hope that's helped with some of the mystery about what this action is of the vibrato, you know, moving through all the different stages of how we can come to that before we can apply it as we like in a piece. But these are the undercover, if you like, viewpoint of what vibrato is and how we can best understand it and practice it. Enjoy your explorations.